Hello and welcome to the Fishing Guide Podcast. Tell you what, Greg is in the house. He can be in the house every day if he wants. Do a podcast show. He can be here every week. We learn new and interesting stuff every week. But this week, because you happen to get the 16 and 18-foot black diamond B&M pole, by gosh, you get to talk about it because mine aren't coming until towards probably the end of the week, and all I can do is wish. And you've been a fishing. Mm-hmm. So
I've even actually used them. Yeah,
tell us about it. You're on their pro staff.
Well, as far as the 18-footer, I've had an 18
it's a black,
and a 16 proto before they even put them on the market.
So this is the Black Widow model.
Yeah, the Black Widow. The 16 is now became my all-time favorite. The
14-foot black diamond B&M pole was your favorite.
If you'd asked me what we're going to use today, we're using 14-footers.
Wow.
And it's a good rod. Don't get me wrong. It's the 14 Diamond series.
Uh-huh.
And so anyway, it's a great rod, but the 16 is just so well balanced, and the tip on it is it's got very good backbone. It's got more backbone than the 14, even the 18, but it's not a broomstick that what some people call some of the other companies.
Uh-huh.
And what I like about it so much too is with my hands and stuff, whether it's arthritis, getting old or what, I have a tendency of when I set the hook of my hand wants to open and I lose control of my rod. But with the 16, it's not bad. The handle's long enough. You can lay against your arm real well on hook set. You don't have to jerk much. It's long enough out there. You just lift it, and the fish is got. And it's got real good backbone to lifting them in and that sort of thing. It doesn't do a lot of the bouncing around because of the rod tip being limber.
Uh-huh.
And that sort of thing, and it's just an excellent rod. Now the 18-footer has a counterweight balance on the end of it too.
So the 16 doesn't, but the 18 does.
16 doesn't, but the 18 does.
Does it? Both of them have the same reel handle?
Yes. Yes, they're both cork handles and long on the ends.
Is it a carbon fiber handle?
Yes, sir.
Grip on the reel section of that?
Yes.
Which is super smooth.
Yes.
So
it's really a sweet rod, and the sensitivity of it is just. We caught fish this last weekend. For the most part, they were hitting it pretty good, but we had some that was just breathing on it.
Right.
And then for a 16-foot rod, and you just barely feel that little bit of a change. It's pretty amazing.
Let's talk about fishing with the long rod, because a lot of people out there maybe have fished with a 12-foot, and maybe they've fished once or twice with maybe a 14-foot, but now you've stretched out into that 16, 18-foot.
Well, and some people too is what you're saying on the 16 and the 14, and of course a lot of that's going to depend on the type of fishing you're doing. Right. Most of the people that's got these long poles are doing the sniping.
Right.
Not always. A lot of people that are fishing, vertical fishing, bus piles and pole timber.
Right.
Another thing that people doesn't think about on those poles is, let's just say we're fishing bus piles today,
right?
And you're fishing with a 14-footer, and I had a 12.
Right.
Well, you're in the front of the boat. You got the live scope. We know where the bus pile is, but you're able to reach it. I can't,
right?
Because I only got a 12-foot, and you got a 14. Plus, I'm standing 2 foot kind of behind and off to the side of you.
Right.
So you can take, if you are fishing a 14-foot, and that's your preference, the other person can take a 16-footer and be right up there with you.
Right.
That's one good thing.
Isn't that really confusing? I love it when when you look over and you think, why is my jig moving? Why is my jig moving? And it's not your jig. It's actually the other guy's jig. You're like, oh, I'm going to get a bite. I'm going to get a bite.
Mm-hmm.
and then the other guy catches a fish, and you're like, oh, that was his jig.
So, but the 18-foot and the 16-foot, it's really a good, comfortable rod. The only thing that, like if you got two of you in the live scope and then you're chasing a roaming fish. Well, Peyton and I were fishing last week.
Okay.
And he started out with the 14-foot, and I started out with the 16. And
right.
And I just fell in love with it immediately. And so finally he gets his 18 out, and you're talking about seeing the two jigs. So
right.
You got two guys that's just eager to catch that fish, first. Who's going to get him first? And so we determined real quick that with two of us having 16-foot long rods, only one of us is going to get the fish because the rod tips are touching each other or crossing, and it was quite a circus every time it.
I wish I'd been videoing that. That'd been interesting.
You should have had your drone on that.
Yeah, so, I would just fly over, and I'd be like, I have to fly my drone. I'm like doing a calculation, 18 or 6 foot. So now I'm flying at least minimal flight is 24 foot. Plus your boats too. So now I'm at 26 feet up. Now I need to fly about 36. 40 feet up in front of you so that you don't whack my drone. So.
But the 16-foot, it's like I said, it's a very well balanced. I use baitcaster reels on mine. Some people prefer spinning rod, spinning reel just because of that. I don't know.
That's what we brought here.
And that's a very good reel, the spinning reel. That 75th anniversary. I've got some of those. They're great. Right. I think they're like an 8-ball bearing reel. Yeah. But the thing is, on them, you got to have your line set loose enough to be able to pull line. So when you're pitching out on a fish, if you're chasing roamers, you need a little bit more line to be able to pitch. So it's a little harder to pull line and pitch at the same time. And it's really hard to try to open the bail and do it because you just can't respond quick enough to close the bail.
You have to have three hands.
So I use the thumb bar bait casting reel. It doesn't can be a cheap one. You don't have, you're not really. It's not like you got to have a 7-to-1 ratio. Right. 5. Well, I guess if you had a higher speed one and you're catching up some slack real quick with a fish to retrieve a fish, it could be handy. But
you just lift your rod up. It's 16 foot up.
It's already up. So with that being said, I use the thumb bar. In other words, if I'm fishing 16 foot, I've got 16 foot of line out already, and I keep the line in my hand. Right. And so I can take and pull it, hit the thumb bar. I automatically hit the thumb bar, whether I need it or not, and I pitch out, and I can get more line if I need it, pull. And I have the only worst part about the bait caster is if that dude hits it and you haven't tripped your
thumb bar
yet, you could have some serious nest. So, but I very rarely trip it until I hook a fish. I just hold my thumb against I'm just programmed to hold my thumb down against the spool and set the hook and then catch the slack out of it if I need to.
So when I'm using like the 14-footer, which I'll be using the 16-footer soon, I turn it upside down. I use the whole butt of the rod over my arm, and I basically have my drag so I can pull it out real easy.
Okay. And then on your bait caster,
on the bait caster, and then when I set the hook, my finger fits up on the spool. And that holds it steady. And when I set the hook, then it's in there. And then I'm one of those that reels upside down.
Yeah. Well, I'm not coordinated enough to do it that way.
I just probably learned it. Probably a bad habit. That's probably what the deal is. But
it's all into what you're used to doing.
I think I saw where the 16-footer was 9.8 ounces. I don't know if you can hold.
That sounds about right.
I don't know if you can hold me to that. I don't know what the 18-footer weighs, but probably because it has the counterbalance stuff on there. So that's probably the reason why.
I think you can actually get it without the counterbalance, but I don't know why you would, because it's just not. It just that counterbalance balances it out. It's really nice.
Let's talk about having a 3-piece rod, because both the 16 and the 18 footer is a 3-piece rod. Mm-hmm. So do you keep your rods together, or do you break them apart?
When I'm fishing in my boat,
when you store them,
when I fish them in my boat, I lay them down. Of course, I got a 24-foot boat.
Yeah.
But I can leave them connected and lay them down along the side of the gunnel there.
How about when you get done fishing?
But when like Saturday, I fished with Peyton out of his boat, so transporting it, I break it down in all three. I bring them all down, and I tip the reel, leave the hook tied in, and I take, there's some little bungee light deals you can buy from Bass Pro. Berkeley makes them. They got a little ball on the end of them with a slide.
Yeah.
And I just take and put that through and then slide it down tight. One or two of them, usually just one right in the middle. It holds all 3 pieces together.
So you can.
And then I just put it in the truck or rod box. I store them in the boat that way. I just put them all, break them all down, and then just run one in a tube by itself, and put them in there that way.
So what I've done is they got those clips, like potato chip bag clips that are flat in the side, and I take those and I just open them up and I put them right up against the rod, and the rod things fit right in there. You just clamp them in.
Well, didn't think about that, but you can also
they work pretty good.
I mean, you can use a rubber band, put it on the eye, hook it on the eye, and come around until you hook it on the eye again.
Yeah, you know what happened with that. Then you couldn't find them again. It worked great. Peyton would say, just leave that 16-foot rod in my boat. Yeah. You go, nope, not going to
That's how I break mine down. I use those little deals. They also got some, you can also buy these little, it's kind of like a flexible wire, coated wire.
Like flex.
And some people use those. I've seen them bundle them up with those.
So let's talk about fishing a little bit, because we got some time about fishing. What are you pitching like with that 16-foot rod, or what are you
most
fishing?
Of the time I use
have you used heavy jigs? You use like 1/4 ounce jigs with it? I
do use up to 1/4 a lot of times, and I have used a 1/4 with another split shot above it. You know, just it depends on that fish, the reaction of how. I mean, you can get too big and spook them. So I mean, I use anywhere from a 16th up to a 16th up to a 1/4 ounce jig. I use an 1/8 a lot. Yeah. Even it don't matter whether you're using a Malibu jig or a hair jig or a hand-tied jig, whatever we'll call it, same way. And then I just peg a sinker above it. Some people use split shots. Some people use egg sinkers. I use the bobber stops, the little rubber bobber stops, and I use the little. I always called them when we was bass fishing mojo.
Yeah, they're a mojo
long deals. Put those on there and I peg those. Most generally we'll always have one, like an 1/8 ounce at least on there.
Right.
And then do that. I like to try to get it to where I'm pretty close to a 1/4 ounce total.
Right.
Total weight. So if I drop down to a 16th or 32nd ounce jig, I'm still going to keep at least an 1/8 ounce above it. If not, go just a tad bigger to get it out there and get it down. That's the thing.
What do you think the hardest thing is about using like a 16 or an 18-foot rod and it being out there?
Well, actually, for me, the longer the rod, having the longer rod for me is easier to get on that fish than having a shorter rod, if that makes any sense. Some people have a little better depth perception, I guess you call it, or they're more accurate at a distance, whether they're throwing something, or whether it's a ball or a dart or whatever.
Right.
But to me, I'm not as accurate with a short rod of getting it where I want it to be.
Right.
I'm either a little bit too far or I'm a little bit shy. Where with the long rod, I can peg them every time.
Do you think it's also better in windy conditions, those longer rods? Than
I do like it better in
cast?
windy conditions, especially because you can put on more weight and just still get them right down there to the fish.
I think when people are casting that they have less likely a chance of hitting their target when it's windy.
Yes, and then also, too, the only thing is about the wind. I've actually fished in enough wind that a gust of wind that'll move your rod tip. I mean, you're on the fish and you're almost to him, and that big old gust of wind moves your whole bait. And what a lot of people don't realize, so if you got a fish, if this is a fish here, and you've pitched out just a tad, daggone, I went past it with a 16-foot rod, example, or 14, whatever.
Right.
People have a tendency to start trying to wind or pull their line with their hand to get that jig to come to the fish.
Right.
Which logics, that works, but it doesn't, because it brings your jig in as you're reeling. So depending on how you're holding your rod tip, of how it's coming closer to you. But because you still want it to be above the fish.
Right.
So what a lot of people don't realize is you take that long rod and you just pick up on the rod and then drop it down. You can lift that rod from 9 o'clock just to 10 o'clock, and you'll bring that bait to you 2 feet, and then just drop your rod tip back. You're out on top of him. So instead of trying to reel and trying to get it above him at the same time, holding your rod tip up and reel, just lift your rod tip up. And then just drop your bait right back down on top of them.
There you go. That's a good tip.
Yeah.
That takes us over to Tackle Time. Tackle Time sponsored by PICO Lures. PICO Lures has a complete line of hard and soft baits. They also have Vanguard Tackle. And Vanguard Tackle has those bobber stops that he was talking about. They actually have rubber bobber stops, and they have the thread bobber stops. I've never figured the thread ones out. I know that's for cork fishing and stuff.
Well, the thread one is, it's a little bit more complicated.
There you go. Too complicated for me, but they also have some egg weights if you can't find the Mojo weights, because they're not as easy to find as
they're not.
Like the egg weight ones. And if you're like me and you lose a lot of baits, maybe
they have the split shots as well.
Yeah, split shots you could get them there, but they also have all kinds of jig heads and oh my gosh, they got soft plastics and they got all kinds of stuff that you can catch, everything on. I know it was Christmas time. Mitch had talked a little bit about crankbaits and how some of the colors are real popular, and shad color were real popular, and we're coming like the shad pattern ones, but spring's coming. And then that early in the year when you start like trolling crankbaits, you start hitting those real wild, colorful ones, the geezer clown, the ones that really pop, orange tiger, things like that. But you can check all those out at PicoLures.com. Greg, if they want to find out more or if they want to get in touch with you so they can go on a guide trip and fish one of those big 16, 18-foot rods.
And also information on installs. I do a lot of installs and stuff too, and graphs. And so Greg Robinson on Facebook, or Greg's Guide Service on Facebook. Private message me, or 479-601-1683. You can call or text.
There you go. There you have it. Like I always like to end the show, make sure you keep your hook sharp and your lures in the water.